Cut the Games podcast with D Rich, man. You already know what's going on. Everybody tuned in. Smash that like button if you're on YouTube. I'm going to say it again. Smash that like button. Subscribe. Follow me on all social media platforms at D Rich TV. Now, you already know on my platform, I only bring people on here who know more than me. And this guy right here, Rashad Phillips, not only does he know more than me, he was a baller, the real official deal. When I saw you in person in Akron, I believe it was at a tournament, and I saw how some of the professionals were rocking with you, I said, this dude is the real deal, because sometimes on social media, you may see somebody, but they're not really plugged in the way that they act. And then I did some Google research, because I love to Google, and I found out that you held multiple records at Detroit Mercy. You are an official bucket getter. Most points in the season, 91% from the free throw line, average 22 points as a senior, 23 as a junior, 18 as a sophomore. I did my research, man. So you official. How you doing today, man?
I appreciate you, D-Rich.
I got to give credit where it's due.
I appreciate that so much, man. And it means a lot to be on your platform. I've been watching you from afar, and we saw each other in traffic, in passing, and always had huge respect for you, what you mean to the culture, your voice, your platform, everything that you're doing. It's an honor to be on your show. Thank you.
Man, I appreciate you taking your time coming on. And I did some other research, and I found out that not only did you make your mark in the game of basketball, but now you're doing it in other sports also with Prestige Management, one of the biggest NIL companies right now. You got the #1 offensive tackle. You got a top 10 edge rusher. You got a Nigel Kennedy who signed the biggest NIL deal for a softball player. I believe it was $1.2 million. And then you got Darius Acuff, the #1 point guard in the class of 2025. What made you get into that venture?
I think just my upbringing. My father started a community center in Detroit back in 1979, and he's always been helping kids navigate the landscape of sports. And back in the day, keeping them off the streets or what have you. So it comes naturally. So for me to, start my own management company and help these kids navigate the landscape of sports and what it is today, I just felt it was a perfect opportunity. And I see myself in all the kids that I represent. So I see a little bit of what they bring to the table and what I was as a player. So I'm happy, excited to be a small part in their greatness as they move forward.
Do you believe that NIL is good or bad for college sports overall?
I think it's great. I do. I think it's great. That's a loaded question.
Yeah.
I feel like, and this is me speaking from our own personal experiences of being a college athlete. So I speak from a different chair than a lot of other people. I feel like, especially being a big time athlete, an All-American, a person that can move the needle, a box office type of person. That's the kind of player I was.
Right.
I feel like you should be compensated for that. Obviously, education is first, and it's very important. But when you're in college, that's like a job.
For sure.
Being an athlete is a job at the college level. So you're going to school and you have a job, a full-time job at the same time. And I believe that you should be compensated for what you bring to the table.
Yeah, man, I'm looking at college football, which is my favorite sport, and I see so much. We'll pay this player that to come here. And I just worry about 10 years from now, do players still go to a program because they love that program? Back in your day, people wanted to go to Michigan because they loved Michigan.
Yeah,
they wanted to go to Ohio State because they loved Ohio State. Now it's all kind of pay for play, and I feel like it kind of take away from the sport a little bit.
I get that. There's two sides of the coin here. There is anything that you do, laws or whatever, there's always going to be people who bend the laws, who try to find the loopholes, and that's what you're addressing here. I do feel like that there needs to be some type of salary cap when it comes to paying players, but there's no way that I'm going to sit up here and say that college athletes should not be paid. They should definitely be paid. They're entertaining us. We're sitting on our couches watching Cam Ward throw for 4 touchdowns. Like, he's entertaining us. Like, that's entertainment. He should be paid for that. And again, the offensive lineman, the defensive lineman, everybody, the coaches, it's a job. You should be compensated for the job that you do.
Well, I think it's dope that you in the field with it now, and you can actually help these players change their lives, because every player not going to go to the NBA, the NFL. This gives them the opportunity to stay in college, get a degree, and start life off with some money, because everybody didn't get that opportunity back in the day when you were playing. So that's one of the most important things. Now, you know why I brought you on here today, because when it comes to this basketball, man, I don't know everything. I think I see some things, and some things I don't understand. So I want to get your expertise on some of these opinions that I have. And the first one is, has AAU ruined basketball in the sense that these kids go to college? I don't know if you saw the video the other day. It was an Auburn player who was frustrated that he wasn't getting the ball. I'm not going to say his name because I know the kid. He's a good kid. But to me, that's a part of AAU culture. You used to having things your way. Do you feel like AAU ruined basketball nowadays?
Man, that's to say it ruined basketball. I think that's a stretch to say it ruined basketball. I do think that it has played a part in the bravado, the false bravado of basketball. I think every kid feels entitled that they should be a star. Everybody can't be a star. I mean, everybody can't be a star. And I feel that AAU, some of the gatekeepers in AAU and some of the parents are the problem, because some of the gatekeepers and some of the parents are the people that are putting the batteries in the backs of the kids. So we have to address up top before we address the floor. So to answer your question, AAU has not ruined basketball, but I do feel like the people that have a lot of influence are helping ruin the game.
You know, Rashad, I'm looking at the game of basketball and I'm saying to myself, it's become too expensive. How can a kid living in a neighborhood of poverty that has a little bit of talent, how can they afford to get involved in the game of basketball with as much as it costs? I mean, what would be your advice to a kid right now that's standing at 6'1", gonna hit a growth spurt? He has the talent, but he don't got the money to get out here and get marketed. What would you tell a kid like that?
A lot has to come down to us as humans being good people. Where's all the good people? And I say that because I grew up in that type of environment. All of my friends, we grew up in that type of environment, but there were times when the adults had to step up and sometimes eat the costs and take the sacrifices for kids that grow up in those type of environments. I've watched my father start an AAU program and look to find grants and sponsorships and stuff like that, because the kids in the neighborhood couldn't afford to travel like that. I don't think that you should be excluded from that experience just because you can't afford it. I think the adults need to step up more and provide an avenue where kids can have that experience.
You know what pisses me off? You know what grinds my gears, as Peter Griffin would say? I'm looking on the top 100 rankings in basketball. And all these kids mostly go to prep school. I mean, I'm trying to find somebody local here in Dallas that can rock the gym, sell out the gymnasium, but everybody goes to prep school. How can we get high school basketball locally back on track? I mean, I don't need every top 5 kid there, but at least 1 or 2 stay at home, get the gym rocking, because you look a kid up and you find out he from your city, but he never went to high school in your city because he went to prep school. What's going on?
Man, you know what? I'm gonna cry a river with you on that one. I'm with you, because I grew up in the 90s where all the top players went to their local high schools, and that's where the purity of the game, the organicness of it all really took shape. We're just in a different stage of the game, Rich. Like, that's where we're at. Prep schools with social media and access to being on TV and things of that nature, it'll never be where we want it to be from that standpoint. Everything is elevated now. Everything is broadcasted. Every kid has a YouTube channel. Everybody has a camera crew. It's really become a lights, camera, action, opposed to just about the game of basketball. And that's what you want. You want it to be about the sport itself, but there's so many things that go on outside of the sport now. We probably will never get that pure essence of the game back.
I was listening to Miles Bridges talk on a podcast, and he was speaking about how playing in Flint, Michigan was so lit because it's nothing like playing high school basketball, like where you're from. But he had to get out that environment and go somewhere where he could thrive and get away from a certain group of people. And I understand that to a very good extent, because some kids have to get away, but some kids just leave because they think prep is the way that you have to go. And I refuse to believe that you have to go to prep school if you're one of those guys all the time.
Yeah, there's a case by case study. Yeah. There's guys that are just leaving just for the glitz and glamour, as you would say. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times when kids do that, it doesn't go well for them. If you do the research, if you don't have to leave, I believe you should stay in your local high school. I remember like Mateen Cleaves was right there in Flint. He was a legend right there in Flint. You look at guys that grew up in Detroit, like Winifred Walton stayed right there, Detroit Persian. Like Kobe Bryant didn't go prep, right? So it really comes down to things have started to evolve from a digital media standpoint where kids want to be seen. And a lot of times playing in the backwoods of a high school where there's no cameras, nobody's seeing it, it's not being advertised. You feel like you're being slighted because you look on social media and you see, man, he had 18 points, but it's all over Instagram and Twitter. Kids want attention. In order for them to get that attention, they're going to leave their local high schools and go follow the cameras.
They say the 2025 NBA draft class is shaping up to be one of the best of all time. But when you look at mainstream media, you would think that Cooper Flagg, which is a good player, is light years ahead of every other player in that class. But I'm seeing players like Dylan Harper. I'm seeing players like Ace Bailey. I'm seeing players like Trey Johnson. And I'm seeing some players who came back to school for their sophomore season that could potentially compete for that number one spot. Is Cooper Flagg as advertised, Rashad?
I think he's good as advertised, but I also think that with the advertisement that he receives, they tend to exclude the Trey Johnsons and the Ace Baileys. I feel like Cooper has warranted that attention. Like I've seen Cooper with my own two eyes, and the first time I seen him was he was a freshman, and I knew right then and there that the kid was special. He comes from a terrific background. His mom, Kelly, is excellent. Just the pops, like they're just excellent people. And that's what I love most about Cooper. He comes from good people. So the attention that he is getting is warranted. But what I disagree with, and this is not against Cooper, but I feel like the media finds one darling and they get all of the push while there's 7 or 8 or 9 other kids that are just as qualified to receive that same type of attention.
What do you think Cooper Flagg's ceiling is? Because some people, his freshman year, he played in Maine. I believe he led him to a state championship. He averaged 20-some points that year. But from that point on at Montverde, I don't know. When I went to see him, it's like he didn't really have to do too much. When it comes to high school basketball, if I'm coming to see you and you're supposed to be that guy, listen, my standards are high. Because when I was a kid, LeBron was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and when I went to see him play, I mean, he lived up to the billing because he led his team. He was doing this, that. He was doing everything on the floor. But Cooper went to a prep school. He didn't really have to do that much, but everybody still vouches for what he can do on the court. I mean, what's his ceiling?
I see what I get what you're saying, though. I get what you're saying, Rich. So he was on a loaded team. You want to come to the game and see the dude go for 42, 15 rebounds, 9 assists,
25 shots minimum.
Yeah. You coming in as a fan, like, I want to just see this dude put on an absolute show. Well, that wasn't going to be the case with Cooper at Montverde because, again, that was a loaded team. The starting 5 players are all high-level Division I players. You see that they're having their impact on the game right now at the college level. So there was a loaded team. But let's break down Cooper Flagg as a player because that's what you really want me to
for sure.
talk about. So when you look at Cooper Flagg, the NBA comparison that I have for him, and I put this out here 2-3 years ago, is he reminds me of Andre Kirilenko from the Utah Jazz. And what I mean by that is when you watch Andre Kirilenko play the game, he was as versatile of a player that you would see during that time. I think he would be a superstar in today's game because his ability to defend every position, his tremendous defensive awareness, shot blocking, his ability to get deflections, steals, and then offensively, it was hard to guard him because he can score out of a pick and roll. He can score out of a pick and pop. He was an excellent slasher. He was a great athlete. So his only weakness was his three-point shooting. So when you look at Cooper Flagg, that's the closest NBA comparison that I have because Cooper can score the ball. He's really worked on his three-point shot. It still needs some work, but he's added to the toe tap scoring from the second level. He can score out of the pinch post. He's a great athlete. Again, the challenging part for him offensively will be his three-point shooting. But as far as that, I think he's going to be a very, very productive NBA player.
I feel like in today's game, we always talk about who's going to be the face of the NBA in the future or who has a chance of being the face out of the young players. And I'm looking at AJ Dybantsa, and to be the guy, you have to want to be that guy, and you have to take that on. Some people don't want to be the guy. We just put it on them. But when I'm watching this kid, I'm watching in the way that he moves. I'm watching the colleges that he is about to choose from. He's not really trying to follow the wave that much. He's trying to do his own thing. And when you hear him speak, you can tell that he's level-headed and he comes from good people, which is very important. And then you see the growth of his game. Rashad, I'm not a basketball aficionado. I don't believe he's anywhere near his ceiling. I mean, he's getting better year in and year out. What do you think about AJ Dybantsa? What's his ceiling?
Now, I really like AJ. I just think he has all the tools to be a star. I do. So I'm old school, so I got to go back to my class. AJ reminds me a lot of a guy that I played against in high school. And this guy was one of the most ferocious high school players that I've ever encountered, and his name was Tim Thomas. He reminds me a lot of Tim Thomas with his size, how ferocious he is, how he competes every possession. And that in itself can propel you to be in a starting league. Now, he also reminds me a lot of Josh Jackson in high school. When Josh Jackson was in high school, he was as dominant of a wing player that you would see. 6'9", can get his own shot, can score on anybody, mean, tough, crazy motor. And Josh also had an excellent freshman year at Kansas. So when I say the Josh Jackson comparison, people automatically try to run to this NBA career and say, oh, he didn't do this, he didn't do that. When you look at Josh Jackson as a high school player in his 1 year at Kansas, he was dominant. AJ Dybantsa reminds me of a mixture of Tim Thomas and Josh Jackson. I believe he'll be a star.
Speaking of Josh Jackson and just other players, like the basketball world is funny because it's some players that you think will work out 100%. Like you're like, it's no way that this kid can go to the league and fail. And then you look up and 5 years later, they in and out the G League and things ain't going right. And that just let me know sometimes it's all about situations. Sometimes the higher the pick, the wronger the fit, right?
Facts.
I mean, Trayvon Duval is always my prime example. When Trayvon Duval was at Duke in high school basketball, went to Duke, he made the wrong decision, a lot of people say, but it's no way you could tell me that Trayvon Duval would not be in the NBA today. And that's why I tell a lot of kids, none of this is guaranteed, no matter if you got a 5-star ranking or not. You can be out of there in 2-3 years, man. Nothing is guaranteed.
Nothing. I agree.
Nothing. What do you think about Ace Bailey at Rutgers?
I like Ace Bailey. I think Ace Bailey is more offensively equipped than Cooper Flagg.
Right.
And that's from an offensive standpoint. I feel like Ace reminds me a lot of Brandon Miller from an offensive standpoint. He can get to his spots. He is a tough shot maker. He's a tough shot taker as well. But he's one of those prototypical wings that NBA teams build their franchises around. I see him as a guy that can just really put the ball in the basket.
I'm going to ask you a tough question, but I need you to answer it. Okay.
Man.
If you have the number 1 pick in the 2025 NBA draft, let's just say you the Portland Trail Blazers or the Utah Jazz, because that probably looks like what it's going to be. Who are you selecting? AJ, Cooper Flagg, Trey Johnson, Dylan Harper? Who you selecting with the number 1 pick?
Wow, that's a tough one. So if I'm the Utah Jazz, this is a no-brainer. Okay.
Oh yeah. Everything fits perfectly.
So if I'm the Utah Jazz, they won't even have to give us the 5-minute countdown to turn the card in. It's going to be Cooper Flagg.
Oh yeah. It's a marketing dream.
It's a marketing dream. He fits, and it goes with my NBA comparison of Andre Karolinko. Like, he played at Utah at his best years there. So I feel like that will be the number 1 pick if I'm the Utah Jazz. Now, if I'm the Portland Trail Blazers, it could be Ace Bailey a little bit for me because of his style of play and the way Coach Phillips understands the game and his ideology. I feel Ace Bailey fits the Portland Trail Blazers style of play better because they need scoring in Portland. They kind of struggling with that. For me, I think Scoot hasn't hit his stride yet from the guard position. So I think a guy like Ace Bailey will take some pressure off Scoot and be kind of like what Brandon Miller has been for LaMelo Ball in Charlotte.
You know, when it comes to the game of basketball, when you watch players that are young, sometimes you worry if they're ever going to hit that growth spurt. You say, man, if he can just grow to be 6'1", 6'2", things will work out. Some players never hit that. But when you look at Darius Acuff, hey, the number 1 player in the class, Darius, number 1 point guard in the class 2025, Darius Acuff Jr., when he hit that growth spurt, I knew it was on. I mean, went from unranked to the number 1 point guard in the class of 2025. I mean, can you just talk about his growth and his development?
Yeah, I think when you talk about Acuff, I feel like he's been here before. I really think that the kid is a reincarnation because nothing is new to him. It seems like he just has already experienced it. When you look at Acuff Jr.'s game, he reminds me of the 2000 era guards, the Stephon Marburys, the Allen Iversons, the Baron Davises, the Steve Francis. He's kind of an old school soul, and he plays that way. He's he kind of has a Derrick Rose demeanor. He's a hard worker. He's very intelligent. He understands what's in front of him, and he's very goal oriented. And when you have those type of attributes coming from where he comes from, the sky's the limit, you know. And his father, his mom, just done a terrific job in his upbringing and putting him in positions to be successful. And now the world is starting to see the fruits of that.
How you like him joining Coach Kyle at Arkansas? Do you feel like that's the best decision that he could have made?
I love it. I love it from the standpoint of when you look at Coach Cal and what he's done for guards of that caliber, like the John Walls, the Derrick Rose, the Tyler Ulysses, and just recently Robert Dillingham and Reed Shepherd. When you look at that class of guards, Darius Acuff Jr. fits the mold. I believe he's going to be. I believe he's the Stephon Marbury of this generation. He's 6'3". He's 190 pounds of all muscle. He's strong. He can shoot it. He can score it. He can defend. He's a leader. He has everything that you need to be a lead guard. I believe he'll be a top 5 pick.
How you feel about the pairing of him and Malik Thomas now that he going there next year at Arkansas? Do you feel like that's a good pairing for the backcourt? It's gonna
be a lot like the De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk situation. So it's gonna be exciting. Both kids are super explosive. They're exciting to watch. And Malik is real theatrical, so he's gonna bring a little bit of that energy. I think Coach Cal made a great call in getting both of those young men, and the team is gonna go as far as they can take them.
When it comes to people putting out stats and numbers and doing comparisons, sometimes it's all fluff. But when it comes to Cameron Boozer and you read off the resume that he has had in AAU and high school, the state championships, the EYBL championships, his resume is impeccable. A quiet kid. I don't know if I even heard him talk besides when he committed to Duke. I mean, he's all about putting the work in and getting the job done. I believe that comes from his father, who has already been there before, and he can show him and guide him and tell him what to do and what not to do. But when I look at him, I believe he gonna be that guy at Duke, and I believe he's gonna work out in the NBA for sure. What you think of Cameron Boozer?
So when you look at his resume, it reminds me a lot of Chris Webber. You look at Chris Webber's resume, you know, what Webber won like the state title 3 years in a row in Michigan. And then he went off to college to the University of Michigan and took them to the national championship game his freshman and sophomore year. So Boozer is kind of on that Chris Webber path as far as resume. When you look at his game, as far as his skill set, he's very unassuming. He reminds me a lot of Evan Mobley as far as what he can bring to a team. If you look at the Cleveland Cavaliers currently right now, they're like 12-0. They're winning a lot of games, and Evan Mobley is one of the reasons why, because he's a great switch out defender. He's a good athlete. He plays the game the right way. He doesn't take bad shots. He plays an efficient brand of basketball. So when you look at Boozer, that's what he brings to the table, and that's what he'll continue to do as a pro.
And the class of 2025 NBA draft is special, and the class of 2025 high school class is special also, because to me, I hate to use the word, you know, NBA ready, because, you know, we didn't ran that into the trash can by now. But when I look at Darren Peterson, man, listen, 6'5", strong guard. It's not too many things that Darren Peterson cannot do on the basketball floor. I just feel like whoever gets him at the NBA level, and Kansas got them one. I was always wondering why Kansas can't seem to get one of these for sure guys when it comes to these recruits, but they got one in Darren Peterson. I feel like his game is impeccable. What do you see when you watch him?
Yeah, Peterson is tremendous. Again, his size is what separates him, the way he plays with his size. So he reminds me a lot of DeMar DeRozan when DeMar was in high school. Not as athletic as DeMar DeRozan, but just his ability to get to the basket and carve up the defense and make the right decisions and get to his spots on the floor and elevate over smaller defenders. That's what I see with Darren Peterson. Him going to Kansas automatically elevates him, because when you go to a school like Kansas, you know they're going to win. You know they're going to win. They're going to be a top 5 team in the nation. Darren has put himself in position to play in the Final Four, Elite Eights, on those big stages where the world can actually watch how great he is. So I think he's in a perfect position to set himself up to be a top 3 pick.
Is the NBA product? I'm looking at the 3-point shot, man.
Oh,
Anthony Edwards in general, you know, the 3-pointer shots that the 3-point attempts that he's taken this year, I mean, it's crazy. I think last game versus Miami, he had 14 attempts from the 3-point line. The game before that, I believe it was 13 and 15, if I'm thinking correctly. He's shooting that 3-point shot a lot, and if he's not, he attacking. And the NBA product in general, the 3-point shot, I mean, it's crazy this year. I think it's at an all-time high. Is the product diminished because of the 3-point shot?
To an extent, I think you need to turn the sliders down. I said this on Twitter about 4 or 5 years ago. I said that, you know, as far as the 3-point shooter, it's trending in the wrong direction. The 3-point shot has taken the skill set out of the game almost, because in today's game, you only got to be able to shoot threes and dribble. It's gotten away where the game has excluded the all-around player. Like, where's the Tony Allens and those type of guys? Like, the game is weeding out guys that can do multiple things offensively, because teams only want players that can shoot the corner 3 and dribble the ball. So I do think that the 3-point shot is being abused to a certain extent, and we need to get back to toning it down a little bit and kind of shaping out the game where it's more appeasing to the consumer.
Do you believe they should make the 3-point shot more difficult to maybe phase it out a little bit or tone it down with the 3-point attempts, or you don't agree with that?
I think the line should stay where it is. I think they should bring back a little bit of some of the hand checking. I think defenders are at your mercy in today's game. Like, these guys can't really, and you're a football guy. So, like, even with the NFL, like, we're getting too many touchdowns, too many 3-point shots, like, because the game has gone too commercial, where the game is trying to appease the consumer now. The consumer goes to the football game and they want to see touchdowns. We want to see Lamar Jackson throw 4 touchdowns. We want to see Patrick Mahomes throw four touchdowns. when we go to an NBA game, we want to see dunks and threes. And I think that the game has went over a little too far to appease the consumer. We need to bring it back and start allowing a more purity back into the game. And I think it'll balance out and everybody still win and in the end.
Why are we so fascinated with younger players? I think it's if a player go back to school for their sophomore year, it's like the worst thing in the world. If he's a junior, it's the worst thing in the world. I said the other day, I'm gonna call Chris Hansen on some of these people, the way they love these young players. The younger the player, the better the player. Besides taking a player that went back for a sophomore or junior year and he's coming in and he's more ready to play. That's why I loved when Dalton Connect got drafted by the Lakers, even though it took him some time to get there, because when he gets the opportunity, he gonna take advantage. Is one and done culture ruined in basketball in a sense?
Yeah, see, the fascination of having a new toy is what's messing things up. It's like you want a Lamborghini in your garage, but you don't really know how to drive it yet. And right. I think we got to get back to the point where I don't think it's hurting basketball, but I do think that it's demoralizing to the upperclassmen at the college level. I feel the NBA needs to, for one, expand and add more teams. And also add another round to the draft. I think it should be 3 rounds. Instead of 60 picks, it needs to be 90 picks. Now, you're going to always have your outliers when it comes to like kids that can be one and dones, like the Cooper Flaggs, Acuff Jr., Darren Peterson, and Boozer and AJ. You're going to have those outliers. But after the outliers, there are the upperclassmen who are deserving to be drafted, that are earning their keep, and that's where I feel that's what's hurting. These GMs need to sit back and look at these juniors and seniors, because these guys can come in and help you right away. We need to get back to fixing that.
When you look at the NBA today, Kevin Durant, year 18, LeBron about to be 40, Steph Curry, he's still doing this thing, but he's getting up there also. The faces that we once knew in the NBA, they leaving. So everybody's asking, who's going to be that next guy? Can it be Anthony Edwards? Can it be Ja Morant? Some people think it can be Luka. I don't think Jokic wants it. Who do you think is the next face of the NBA once these guys are gone?
Yeah, and Chris Paul too. Chris Paul's on like year 22 as well.
Man.
I think what Chris Paul is doing, before I answer it, I got to say this, but I think what Chris Paul is doing, and I don't know what year it is, I think it's 20 or 19, but what he's been able to do at 6'1", that long, it needs to be studied. Because when you look at when you look at all the 6'1" guards of all time, like from Isaiah Thomas to Tiny Archibald to Allen Iverson, once they got around year 10, 11, 12, it started to kind of go downhill. Chris Paul still kind of going, and I just wanted to, shout him out for that, because what he's doing, a lot of people are not talking about at that size.
Crazy.
It's been crazy. But when you talk about the face of the NBA, I think it's time that we have multiple faces instead of one face. The game has evolved so much, and with social media and how the market is, I think you could have multiple guys that can be faces. A name that you didn't say that I believe should be a face of the NBA is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. SGA, to me, I felt like he was the MVP of the league last year. I felt like he got cheated. The dude averaged 30 points a game on 50%. I think he led the NBA in steals. He had the #1 team in the West. I felt like he got slighted when it comes to the MVP trophy. So he's one of the guys that I feel should be a face of the league. I feel like Anthony Edwards has already established himself as a face of the league. Ja Morant too, and Luka and Trae Young. I think these guys are all multiple faces. They need to share the league. I don't think there's another LeBron or Kobe or Michael Jordan. Like those guys were big enough as players to hold the league themselves. But I don't think there's any player that has that type of stature, so they have to share it.
Yeah, man. Before I get you off here, I gotta obviously you love the game of basketball. You lived it. You helping players get these deals. Are you okay with where the game stands today? Like, are you happy with where it's at, or do you think it needs to improve? Or when you look at it, are you one of those people that say, "Oh, back in my day, this, that," or do you just accept the game for what it's become today?
I'm okay where it's at today. I do think there needs to be some tweaks to it, but that's always. But I'm happy where the game is today because it allows these kids to really monetize who they are, their true value. See, when I was coming up, like there was no monetization at all. You know, like we were just playing and you didn't really get anything out of it, but just the self joy. I feel
Right.
now in today's game, these kids could monetize their value even if they don't go to the NBA or the NFL, they still can monetize it, make a living for themselves when they're done playing the game. And that's what I love about where sports is today.
Yeah, man. Anything else you want to plug in about the prestige management or anything else you have going on?
No, I really appreciate it. Again, with prestige management is something that I created because I love helping the student athlete monetize themselves, and I feel like there needs to be more management credible companies that help these parents and kids navigate the entire landscape of sports, because it's more than just on the field, on the court activities. There's a lot of off the court things that needs to be implied with these families so their kids can get the maximum value for themselves.
Do you think some parents can mess it up in a sense when they're looking for too much money and when they got a
Yeah,
for sure product, the kid that for sure gonna make it, but they kind
yeah,
of mess it up by taking the biggest bargain?
yeah. Oh, yeah. A lot of times, parents can mess it up because they want to jump in front of the work. You got to do the work first. The work is going to always come first. And I think a lot of times as parents, and I'm speaking because I'm a parent.
Right.
As a parent, sometimes we want to maximize what we feel our kid is gonna be at that particular moment instead of allowing the kid to be what you know they're gonna be and then maximize it. So that's just my little advice for the parents out there. Allow your kid to get to that destination first before you jump the gun and allow it to happen organically.
Yeah, for sure, man. I definitely appreciate you coming on, man. And in the future, once some more things happen, we can do it again. But I appreciate you taking your time and doing this, man, for sure.
It's been fantastic being on your platform, D Rich. D Rich, keep the culture on their toes. Appreciate you, my guy. Talk soon.
All right, for sure. I appreciate you.